There are many iconic symbols of Scotland, from kilts and haggis to the rampant lion and the unicorn. People from all around the world associate our country with these symbols. Yet the most iconic of all is the simple and timeless Scottish Saltire, our nation's flag, known to some as the Cross of St Andrew. But unlike many other European flags, ours was not created in recent times. It is told that the people of our land used the Saltire long before Scotland even existed. But what truth lays hidden within this old tale? Was it the true founding of the first British Church? And was Scotland chosen to rule by the first apostle? That is what we will find out today. And our story begins many years ago in the Dark Ages. The legend of the Saltire. Many long years ago, in 832 AD, a great army of Pictish men, led by the then High King of Alba, Angus MacFergus, joined with an equally sizable contingent of Scots, led by Eochaid, King of Dalrieta. The armies journeyed south to the land of Lothian, which at the time was part of the Kingdom of Northumbria. The soldiers were on a punitive campaign to raid the border villages of Lothian. This was quite successful for the Northmen, until a far greater host of Saxons and Angles appeared to defend their land. The Scots and Albanach were taken unaware and quickly retreated as they were vastly outnumbered. The Northumbrian army, under the command of King Athelstan, pursued the Northmen and eventually cornered the armies near East Linton. You see, there had been quite a substantial amount of rainfall over the last few days, and the commonly traversable Peffer Burn had swollen in size and became a great obstacle to march an army through. So it was decided by Angus and Eochaid that they would rather die in battle than be cut down attempting to retreat across the burn. They made camp that evening and were determined to fight at first light on the next day. But King Angus greatly feared the outcome of the battle and knew they were vastly outnumbered. That evening, the King of the Picts was visited by a radiant man dressed in shining white robes. He told the king he was St Andrew, the first chosen disciple of Jesus Christ. He brought news that Angus would be victorious in tomorrow's battle and to worry no longer. The king had heard of Andrew before, and it was said that the saint had chosen the Picts as his people to lead. This belief was thought to come from Saint Regulus, who was told by the spirit of Andrew in a vision to bring the holy relics of the first apostle to Scotland, and to trust them in the hands of those people. When Angus awoke the next morning, he found his soldiers staring at the sky. It was there, high above the land, that a great cross shone in the sky, the very same Saltire cross that the apostle had been crucified upon, and has evermore been a symbol of his martyrdom. Bolstered by the holy sign, King Angus rallied his men and called for them to cry the name of Andrew as they charged the Northumbrian ranks. King Athelstan was cut down in this mighty onslaught, and at the sight of their dead king, the Angle and Saxon men lost morale and were swiftly defeated by the combined forces of both Scot and Albanach. Once the fighting had come to an end, Angus told the men about the visit from the strange robed man, and how it was the saint himself that should be congratulated for the victory. The King of Alba claimed that Andrew would forever be the patron saint of the Picts, and that this day would never be forgotten. To ensure such, he made a flag, a dazzling white saltire, on a background of sky blue, so the people would always remember how the saint aided their king in battle. Eochaid agreed to these terms, and decreed that every Scot would also hold to this pact, and so the Saltire became the flag of the Scots and the Picts. Yet some years later, the grandson of Yochi, a man named Kenneth MacAlpin, would unite the realms and become King of Scots and Picts in the new country of Scotland, and he would honour his ancestors by making Andrew the patron saint of Scotland. And it was truly then that the Saltire became Scotland's flag, and it would remain there forevermore. That was the legendary tale of the Saltire, and of how Scotland gained its flag. But is there any truth to this old legend? To find that out, we must first ask ourselves, who was St. Andrew, and why would Scotland be of any significance to him? Andreas, or Andrew, was a fisherman from Galilee, and a brother of Shimon bar Yonah, or Simon Peter in some texts. They were the first disciples of Christ, and were present at many of the pivotal moments in the life of Jesus. After the death of Christ, it is told that Andrew travelled Asia and Greece, seeking to convert the people and spread the teachings of Christ. Eventually, Andrew was arrested for heresy and sentenced to be crucified in the city of Patras in 60 AD. The earliest known accounts of his death come from the 6th century, almost 600 years after the crucifixion took place. But these texts all agree on one thing: Andrew was crucified on a Latin cross, which was commonly used at the time by the Romans. The story that he asked specifically to be crucified on a saltire or X-shaped cross, due to his belief that he was not worthy of dying on the same kind of cross as Jesus, did not appear until the late Middle Ages. So, with the historic shape of the cross, and the new part of the story not coming in until the 9th century, it certainly seems to damn the legend of the Saltire. So how is Andrew connected to Scotland? Well, like I previously mentioned, this is due to St. Regulus, a monk at the city of Patras in the year 345 AD. He was commanded in a dream to take the bones of St. Andrew, which he did, and then in a second dream was commanded by an angel, or in some versions the very saint himself, to take the bone relics and bury them at the ends of the earth. With this in mind, poor St. Regulus set sail with a knee bone, 3 fingers, a tooth and an arm bone. He would sail for many days before eventually being shipwrecked on the coast of Fife in Scotland. This is where he would build a shrine and tell the local Picts that they were the chosen of St. Andrew. In some versions, the saint is met off the boat by Angus MacFergus, which is quite the feat, seeing that Angus would not be born for another 300 years. Again, this does not fill me with confidence for the Saltire legend. It is claimed that these relics were in Scotland at one time, but not until they were brought to England during the Augustinian mission to convert the Anglo-Saxons to Christianity in 596 AD, and not seen in Scotland until 732 AD, when Bishop Acca of Hexham visited Fife. Although I must say, there are no great sources for this version of the story either, but what we do know for certain is that the tale of St. Regulus, sometimes referred to as St. Rule, was first told in the 12th century, some 900 years after the tale takes place, and well over 1,000 years since Andrew was crucified on the Latin cross. The legend of the Saltire, and that of St. Regulus, was heavily publicised and pushed by Scottish kings, noblemen, and various figures in the Scottish Church during the 12th century. The independence of Scotland was under threat at this time, and the Scottish Church was in contest with the Archbishop of York as to which religious sect was preeminent in the area, or the most important in Britain at the time. By promoting the story of Regulus and St. Andrew's Saltire, the Scottish Church not only acquired perhaps the most important saint the first chosen apostle of Jesus Christ, but legitimised the authenticity of the church, as it was in fact chosen by St. Andrew, and thus the most righteous and true. Not only did the church receive this great boon, but also, as the tales took place in the 4th century, it now meant that the foundation of the Scottish Church predated both the English and Irish churches by some centuries. All this would mean that the Scottish Church was the first ever church in Britain, and specifically chosen by God. This was not only a wonderful work of propaganda, but also gave Scotland great political power, especially in the realms of Christianity. The legend of the Saltire was even used during the Wars for Independence, when the Scottish used the tales to persuade Pope Boniface VIII to issue a papal order to Edward I of England to end the war with Scotland. Coincidentally, it is around this time that we finally begin to see the Saltire flag as the flag of Scotland, and a little earlier we begin to see the depiction of St. Andrew on an X-shaped cross, which can be found on Scottish seals from 1180 AD. And this specific iconography can also be seen on the seal of the Guardians of Scotland. Then, in 1320, within the Declaration of Arbroath, it is cited that Scotland was converted to Christianity by St. Andrew, and thus the image of the Saltire and Scotland were forever joined. But do not get me wrong, it is very possible that the Picts and Scots did worship St. Andrew, as Christian ministries had been in Scotland since the Roman occupation. Then later in the 5th century, many of the famous Irish missionaries would arrive in Scotland, like St. Columba or St. Ninian, and begin to spread this new Far Eastern faith. But this being true, there is certainly no concept of the Saltire or X-shaped cross, and the legend of the Saltire is entirely fictional, a wonderful piece of propaganda to reinforce the might of the Scottish Church during the late Middle Ages. I found this somewhat disappointing, as it is actually quite a nice tale to tell, but I believe my job here is to tell you tales and stories that were genuinely believed by the people of Scotland and have helped shape our history and culture. Unfortunately, this just isn't one of them. Thank you for listening, and a special thank you to all my patrons, as without your support, I couldn't do this. I apologise if this video seems to go off into the weeds a bit. I wanted to tell you the tale, but could not bring myself to leave out information and tell you that it was essentially fiction and had no real history or impact in my country. There are also many other problems with the legend of the Saltire. To begin with, the Peffer Burn could certainly not stop any army, no matter how much rain there had been over the last few days. Eochaid was actually king of Dalrieta, but in 733, 100 years before our tale, and Kenneth MacAlpin was not his grandson, although it's possible he may be one of his descendants. On the other side of the war, King Athelstan would not be born until the year 894, some 62 years after he was supposedly killed by the Albanach in East Linton. He was also not king of Northumbria, but of Wessex, and then first king of the English when he conquered Northumbria in 927 AD. One specific oddity that I could not get to the bottom of was why St. Andrew's Cross was changed from a Latin cross to a saltire. All early texts refer to it as a Latin cross, and it seems to change around the same time as the Scottish Church and nobility began pushing the link between the Saltire and St. Andrew, but I couldn't find any particular sources or information on how the two became joined. I know that the Saltire has been used in iconography related to battle and heraldry in various forms and colours long before it became entangled with both Scotland and St. Andrew, but there is a gap in my knowledge where the former and the latter meet. So if you know anything about it, or have knowledge on heraldry and the use of the Saltire, I would love to hear from you. I hope this video interested you as much as the research for it intrigued me. So until next time, Slán va.